What's going on, everybody? This is Dave Kelly. We are back with another episode of We Don't Need Permission. I'd like to thank my brothers Altorice and Terrance for being a part of this episode. We did run into some technical difficulties, which is why I'm re-recording this intro. But to start, I'd like to thank all of you who tuned in, subscribed, watched, listened to our first episode. It was an overwhelming amount of support, and we are humbled by it. We truly are, and we appreciate it, and we want to continue to produce content and episodes that garner that type of support going forward. So make sure you guys continue to reach out, continue to support us. Let's get right into this next episode.
Yeah, this week was interesting. To start the week, Sunday was the anniversary of the death of Malcolm X. That brother, at least to me, I can speak, has profoundly impacted my life. You know, we had the quote last week from him, and just like, it's so significant being Black History Month and then having like such a huge, you know, powerhouse of a Black person who, you know, didn't ask for permission. You know, when we think about what we stand for, he embodied that a lot. Can you speak to how some of that brother's words and, you know, his wisdom impacted you as you came up?
Well, I first can just move on the strength that when I was in prison, that knowing the story of him made me definitely want to pursue education while I was there. That's just straight up. Because obviously seeing the movie with Spike Lee, because I didn't obviously have the story of him coming up.
Right.
You know, I'm gonna just be clear, that wasn't really a story that was being shared thoroughly. It was being understood. You heard of the legend, but you didn't really know the understanding, even some of the myths, you know, coming forward. So we've seen the movie, it gave understanding. The brother learned something in prison, educated himself, came out, became, you know, one of the great leaders of that era. Yet to know that he really came out of prison and really changed his life gave me an opportunity to think the possibility that was thoroughly real without having that example straightforward from me and my community, because I didn't have nobody that came home, changed their life, did, and became something of elevation, not just for his family, but obviously for his community and the people that followed that great man. So it just gave me a sense of hope, right, you know, that there was a possibility.
And from your story that, you know, you gave me as we continue to grow and stuff, it is that same path of Brother Malcolm, as far as, you know, having that redemption in prison and being reformed and coming out and just going hard for your community. So I see that in you, and that's just, it's dope to be around people like that. Especially like for me, like I don't idolize many people, but that is somebody who just walks the walk and talks the talk. So,
and I even like the fact that, you know, obviously he came in one direction, was pushing hard in it, and then as he evolved as a man, you know, his ideology and the way he moved, you know, grew too.
Right.
You know, so I see that in a lot of things that I aspire to do. I started 16 years ago, coming out of prison, aiming to make sure I never go back. But now, 16 years later, that's not the plight.
Right.
Plight is, I don't need permission to do whatever I need to get done to build legacy for my family and my babies. You know, 5 kids, 3 grandbabies. I got mouths not just to feed, but brains to feed, man. So that hope was so powerful to even have coming out as an inspiration, definitely.
Right, and even thinking about that, the way he grew and changed over time, that's impactful. When you talk about not needing permission, you have to evolve, because permission when you first start won't necessarily be the same permission that you get 4 years down the line, 5 years down the line. So that growth is just incredible as well, and one that we must also take, because if you think about it, it was really hard, you know, during his departure with the Nation of Islam, for him to continue to grow and not just stay in that, like saying like, this is bigger than me, this is bigger than this moment right here. His need to speak to bigger issues beyond just the brothers and sisters of Islam. Like, no, Like he was very firm in speaking up for the 4 little girls that got burned in the fire. Like the fact that he couldn't, it ignited him in many ways. And as we not ask for permission, we have to also remember that it will evolve over time.
Well, change is the only thing that's guaranteed.
Right.
You know, so
Taxes and debt too.
well, you know, and that's the realization of it all. Yeah, you know, to be straightforward, like you said, that to know that possibility exists, you know, to be able to understand that, you know, people always, you know, you're trying to change me or I ain't trying to change. It's not aiming to change your characteristic of who you are as a human being. We talk about the great poet Meek Mills once said, levels to this, you know. So it's really, it is. It's levels to this, but that comes with knowledge. It comes with understanding a lot more different, being exposed to a lot of different things, getting a sense of understanding, awareness of it, and then formulating a plan of how to really inject yourself into it and do it.
Right.
You know, because action at the end of the day is the element. You know, you can learn a bunch of books on the back of an ass is useless.
Right.
That donkey could go up and down the street all day with them books, and nobody gonna know what he's talking about because he don't know what's on them books.
Exactly.
He just carrying them.
Right.
You know, so we have to really move, and that's what I've been blessed to meet so many other leaders. You know, who come maybe from that element of understanding too.
Right.
You know, because just being incarceration physically ain't the only level of incarceration. It's mental too.
Right.
Let's start with that.
A lot more than mental.
Let's start with that. So it's like a lot of brothers, you know, and sisters have helped, you know, liberate us in that element. So his spirit of leadership as a servant, you know, a servant leadership, you know, moves throughout our communities and has built so many other leaders. I just wish that we would have really knew his story, really would have been something that was documented into our communities as an uplifting in our school book, different that. You know, any other great leaders would have expounded from that. He's just one of the many, let's be clear. Right. But, you know, we celebrating, you know, that his memory at this time. But, you know, so just to speak to that, like, if we were exposed to as many leaders that our communities had, even what we're going to talk about today is a perfect example of how, cut that off early. Cut that great leader off early. What?
Right.
Why are we going to let him get to 39 and be in Martin Luther King? Why are we going to do that?
Exactly.
Like, we just thought that he was the worst thing in the world. So now we're going to see something else. We're going to see the potential something else?
Nah. They cut the snake head off.
And that's how real this is. And I'm sorry that we've learned. I'm sorry that, you know, that there's an attitude that now that we know, you know, we unfortunately don't know what to do. And that's why collaboration is so important and partnerships are so important.
Right.
Because what I don't know, you do. He does. They do. Community.
And even to add on to that point of just not knowing, think about this. And this is what when I was initially getting into like education and trying to figure out how I can be like young and impactful in education. It's like, think about this. In Newark, we have a school called Malcolm X Shabazz.
Yes.
Yet, all of my siblings who graduated there, all of my friends, don't know much about the man of the school that's it's named after, right? So when I thought about that, it's just like, we don't do enough, and then we can't have just one leader, right? There was Malcolm X, and then when they took him out, there was nothing else, like no big energy. Then we have like these strong movements in one period, and then when they take out a leader, it's like everybody fall back. So,
but let's be a little more clearer too, though. It's not that we don't have a lot of great leaders; they don't have the exposure. Those gentlemen were nationally recognized. Let's be clear. In those communities, there were leaders there. There were organizers. There were people in the midst. They just didn't have Instagram. It wasn't no social media. The media, white media, wasn't going in those communities celebrating those leaders, and the black media ain't have enough capacity to go into those communities to celebrate those leaders also. So we have to be clear that those gentlemen made it through the cracks to get into our consciousness, but it was so many other individuals that was out there.
And I think that needs to be recognized more.
So I'm glad they celebrating Black history the way they do now, as far as not just going after the regular.
Right.
The ones that we, to the point, all know now.
Right. And I was saying, a couple of weeks ago, like, Black History Month don't feel the same anymore. but that's because, as I am growing, as my generation is growing, we're craving. We need to know who else.
Because it goes to the sense that really the relevance of Black History Month is really at this point really Black History Month is every year,
Right.
every day, every month. Like when we at this point, like let's be clear, because we played 100% in the development of this nation.
Right.
So if we celebrating 1 month for a race, like first of all, that goes back to even race and equity. Like we shouldn't even be doing it.
Right.
Like what we talking about? We really shouldn't even be doing that.
Because
Like,
every day, I mean,
should be celebrating us, period.
and how do we do it locally and nationally as far as, because we have so many great leaders throughout the country that don't get recognized locally, even to recognize some of our peers. We have Terrance Bankston walking in, always on CP time. No, just kidding, just kidding. But yeah, like how do we, like going forward, say, all right, we're taking back what Black History Month means? Because it's kind of played out.
Keep it going. By next month, keep going.
Right.
Keep celebrating Black leaders.
Right.
Don't ask for permission. Keep doing it.
Yeah.
Keep going on your social media and keep highlighting another Black leader. Keep celebrating. Yo, like we putting throwback Thursday. How about throwback to your ancestry of who was a leader in your own family?
Right.
He created something. He invented something. He was the leader for that police department, or he was like celebrate our history of leaders.
Right.
Like for real, tell a story of your great leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so many. Like let's be all the way clear.
No, it's the truth. It's the truth.
know?
Like, just thinking locally, how many great leaders that we have had, whether they burst into the national spotlight or if they're just like, you just got awarded recently, right? Like,
Thank you.
those things matter, and we have to. Those are the stories we have to share throughout the year, right? Because Black History Month can't just be February anymore. It has to be Black History, period, because Black history is American history. And I feel like that's the exhaustion of it too, because we're like, I want to hear more. I want to read more stories. I don't want to just wait once a year.
That's why it's on us to put it out.
Right.
Because we can't wait for the media to do it. We are the media.
We are the new media now.
No, we are the media. We always been. We just didn't have the outlets to put it out there
Right.
because we didn't collaborate enough.
Mhm.
Because there's always been Black publishing.
Mhm.
There's always been Black media, but we didn't have that sense of togetherness to really do make sure that the bigger markets don't thoroughly push us out. And you know how much government spends on media marketing? And the government,
Mhm.
I'm talking about almost $1 billion that they give out to contracts to obviously promote government things.
Mhm.
You know how much of that goes to the Black community, the Black media, the Black individuals? $50 million out
Wow.
of $1 billion goes to Black media, bro. So how are we supposed to put our message out when the bulk of the government this is our money. This ain't for profit. This is our taxpaying money that we putting into a system that gives out $1 billion that only gives us back 50 million.
Right.
Like, but once again, but how do we even know this? I'm like, I learned that because I was pursuing something, went down that rabbit hole, and was like, what the hell?
Right.
And that's just one system of equality that stands out. We can keep going, bucket to bucket to where it plays itself out that way. So it's on us, big bro. Like it really is on us. We got enough social media accounts. We got enough TikToks, YouTubes. We got enough media. Like everybody's their own celebrity.
Right.
Literally. So let's collaborate and put our message together. Collaborate on a common message. Put it out there. I don't know. Maybe I'm going too far.
We need to start making Black history and stop trying to just live off the history that other people did 30, 40 years ago. So I would probably say that or offer that to that conversation. When I think about the lack of morality and respect for people of color in general, regardless of, and not that anybody should be disrespected, but it's regardless of what. It's always an uphill battle, or it seems like it is for us. But I think that we get so much caught up in the rhetoric that we're not really engaging in a meaningful way and planting, not writing our own story or telling our own story. We're not even planting the seeds to have a story that's worth being told, some of us. And so I would like to see more of us contributing to what can then be another story told or another contribution to actual Black history. instead of us discussing most of the time people who are dead, you know, or who leadership abilities is probably living on a respirator, you know. And you know, when I think about it, I always say they talk about waiting for Superman. Every time there's some sort of civil rights injustice, it's the same two people. It's Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. It's Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. It's Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. And so, and even with that, some of that is just a money game. You know, with politician paying who to have them come out, and you know, those type of things.
Or even, you know, some of those leaders who's on their boards and who's on, you know, pulling purse strings in their situation.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, Brian Allen had a complaint with the cable network, and one of the things with that was the cable network went and got Al Sharpton and said, listen, see, he represent the black people. They said they ain't got a problem. So why you bugging? And it's like, he don't speak for everybody.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? He not even in cable. He don't make no money, make no moves in this. Y'all give him money. Y'all sit on his board and support him, and then put him in a position to say, nah, everything's good on this side of the planet.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Like, nah. Stop, man.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. And then I guess you can comment on, like, because we were talking about the anniversary of the death of Malcolm X, just how he has impacted you in your life and what you do.
I think the stories of people like that can be inspirational or empowering to whomever. I don't want it to be a sound bite, so I don't want to say he did not impact my life. But I am looking for, and probably am part of who Malcolm X is, so that way, in terms of being an influence, I never really, I don't know. People compare me to Malcolm X. They'll say that before Martin, or they'll say I have a blend of both sides. So I think as I gotten older and I learned more about them outside of the ABC 1, 2, 3 thing that they teach you in elementary school, that the principle of trying to just be on the right side of history. That's what I took from him and Dr. King. It's like, no, they weren't perfect. They made mistakes. They misstepped. They had to deal with what we deal with, people hating on you because you're the chosen one, and all those things. So they dealt with all those variables, and to see them still push through and persevere through. One thing is true, even though I didn't live in that era or have that direct experience like some of the older folks or older people who are instrumental in my life have, and they shared those stories of what it was like to be there. No matter how much they tell those stories, you never know what it's like to actually be under such greatness and leadership. So from that perspective, it's always like a moment of how did this person impact their life, where it's really their legacy and their contributions, and how valuable they are to me, and how I use that as a motivation, really a blueprint of how to get it done, and that it is possible. If anything, that's the hope that you guys were talking about last time.
Well, that's what we was actually. That's what was my part of when he asked me that question, coming from incarceration. That there was a matter of fact example of someone who did it.
Yeah.
You know, matter of factly, like he went there, he applied himself in the situation, came out of it, and amounted to what he amounted to, and it just gave me a sense of possibility, and some hope, because I didn't have that locally. I didn't have that example of somebody came home, turned things up around, became productive and constructive in society, and lived like I didn't have that. So just to know that myth. And when I was saying to the brother, like, I'm sure there were more.
Right.
But that was
they didn't get the notoriety.
That's what we were talking about with me. That's how we got into the media conversation. Because he was like, how did they get notoriety? I said, we need to push them out there. We're our own media. And then that's when I started breaking down how the system is equity and you know, not those bring that sense of equity in the sense of how they divide our own taxpaying dollars, let alone, you know, private money, like just the money we pay taxes to is divided unfairly in this country. And then we all pay taxes, though. So the people that pay the less taxes get the better split of the money given to do things. So your corporation don't pay a lot of taxes, yet when it's time to get things done that the government needs, we're going to pay you the bigger chunk.
We've seen that with the COVID relief.
Oh, bro.
They got theirs off the top. $5 trillion. And what we get, $1,800 for a pandemic that happened over the course of a year.
It gets to the point like we got it, like Terrance said, like we keep saying action.
Mm-hmm.
Like I get it now. Like I get it. Okay, no doubt.
Yeah.
What we gonna do?
Right.
And all that academic stuff is one thing, man. All that talking and everybody the toughest. I don't care, man. What we gonna do?
Right.
Economically, baby, how we gonna get this bread?
Yeah.
How we? And when I say this bread, I'm not talking about the money. I'm talking about
The
the
resources.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly,
Right.
the sense of getting into the action and figuring out what resources we need, because we have abundance.
Mm-hmm.
We have abundance of resources. Yeah,
And we have the talent to pull it. Like that's one thing that goes underrated. If you look at just Black history, quote unquote, right? Every significant breakthrough in this country has been on the back of a Black person or linked to a Black person. There's not one thing here that we can say this country that a Black person wasn't involved in, didn't have their hands in, whether it was stolen, whatever, right? So how are we changing that from those of us who have historically just had this foot on our back, had this foot on our necks, and say, no, get your foot off of me and let me pull up my brothers and sisters so we go forward.
I just remove myself from those situations, and I think that makes other people uncomfortable. I always say, I don't, NorCal, for example, just as a point of reference, because this, I'm sure, can be applicable to somebody that lives in Georgia, somebody that lives in Texas, or whatever. But typically, I'd say I don't allow my friends to choose me. I choose them. That's one. Two, is a culture here in our political world or spaces. And our town is like a small country town, even though it's the largest city in the state. And so everybody kind of knows everybody, especially if you're involved in community service and community work. It's the same usual suspects. And yet the lack of respect for each other. The way I've seen and witnessed since I was falling asleep in a chair at 8 years old, how they would rip each other apart in the name of politics. Mm-hmm. and then front and stunt with each other to deceive us in public. In terms of who we should support based on this mischief alliance that's there. And so when I see all of that, I knew early on that for me, that space was professional. It wasn't personal. Mm-hmm. And so I like to say I don't have political friends. So for me, I just I treat my professional space like I treat my personal space. I choose the people around me. Those everybody is not meant to be on the same page, meant to be on the same agenda. The content of people's characters are different. And so we have a choice to be around that or not. And I think for so long, particularly here, just kind of like, well, this is who the who's who is. These are the people involved. So if you're not moving how they move, if you don't do what they do, if you're not leaving out of City Hall in shackles and handcuffs, then you can't, you're not relevant. You can't be down. You need permission to be around, to be engaged. And so for me, I said I was going to, if it meant taking the long route, I was going to be in charge of my own legacy. I knew that at 12 years old. From the, again, falling asleep in City Hall chairs at 8. I remember thinking then, like, you know what? I don't want to be that way. I was choosing then as a child to say, when I get older, I want to be different. And I think that's what it comes down to. It's about being courageous enough to make your own decisions. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important for us to see examples and be around examples where you see you don't have to do it that way. I mean, how discouraging is it for me at 38 to see so many of our Black local politicians who I know, I've had lunch with them, dinner with them, been to their house, and they get this far, earn pensions, things that many of us Blacks, wish we could have at the end of a career because Social Security don't do it. All those things that we take for granted that they have and they work for, and then they get to 55, 60 years old and throw it out the window. What kind of tutelage or mentorship is that for me? So, no, I just choose, to separate myself from that and just keep it professional. But that's just my approach.
Yeah. I guess my lens on it, I didn't even know it was an oppression on me. Like I told you, I was a foster kid too. Like I didn't know it was racism. I didn't know that the white man was against me. I didn't know any of that stuff. And meanwhile, I'm trying to deal with that and come through that reckoning and move in my life. So by the time I did receive a sense of understanding about a lot of this stuff. Now I'm fighting to be, my freedom. I'm fighting to really be back in society. So once again, now I can't ask permission. I gotta figure this out. So even that element of, I started at Pathmark coming home from the halfway house, big bro. Like cutting cold cuts for laying fish at Belleville Pathmark on Washington Avenue in Belleville. Like, and here I am 16 years later. Why? Because I came there with a shirt and tie on and my paperwork and my certificates, and I'm ready to get it in. My man said, you put that down, put that white cape on it. Go ahead. And it was like, but they programmed me into prison, like, you got to do it this way, that way, you got to go that way. That man was like, man, put that down there, And I'm like, And then from there, I just realized you play the energy the way the energy is in front of you.
Right.
But the thing is, I had that same transferable skills when I was on the block. Like, so that's where it's different with me, because I get it is a systemic energy. I get that racism real. I get that people will, power will not allow you to penetrate through. Like, you don't receive power, you got to take it. So I get it. The hit is to sit back and wait for people to come to my like-minded thinking. That's not what I will do.
Right.
I will
You'll be waiting all day, you'll die.
I continue to build with individuals and find where we meet a common goal. Because if you're a leader, you're a leader. So at the end of the day, is a common goal somewhere, and if we can find that, we do. If we don't find that till 6 years from now, as long as we have a relationship that's public, that I know of, you know of me, and when it's time to get there, we get there.
Right.
But we don't even do that. Like Terrance said, there's times where he may have. I remember one time somebody asked me, they was like, "Yo, did you know that he said you're gonna endorse him for his candidacy?" It was back when he ran for councilman 4 years ago, and it was like, "Yeah, he said that about you." Like, dude, that's my guy. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you ain't even in tune.
Right.
Like, you think, like, you don't, and then you don't even engage me. Like, this was just because you know of me. So you said that to me as if, like, but dude, we ain't got no energy.
Right.
So my guy. Like, and you said that, so that just really lets me know how you move. Because you're trying to forewarn me something that I'm all the way in engaging already.
Before.
When he's the real outsider.
Right.
But that's the
So it's just real.
it's the manipulation game we play.
And that's why I can't be in that position where, what they're doing to us. Because at this time, in 2020, it's what we doing to ourselves, man.
Right.
Before I went to prison, it was a mental incarceration. At some point in this game, we got to free our minds from a lot of the myths of what black people can't do, brown people can't do. And waiting for the government to do it, waiting for the private sector to do it. Like he always said, waiting for Superman. This is better. They have it.
Right. And that actually wraps us into what the bigger conversation of today is, talking about and reviewing and just discussing Judas and the Black Messiah, Fred Hampton and the Black Panther Party. So first, I'd like to acknowledge the Black Panther Party and who they were. Initially, they were started by Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton to protect the black community from police brutality. Obviously, over time, over years, that evolved into much more, where they were able to provide different programs for the black community, including a breakfast program. So giving the listeners that preface to basically that's what Judas and the Black Messiah is about, only about Fred Hampton's story. So how did you guys feel about that? I'll go last.
So I knew about the story.
Mm-hmm.
I knew about the story. Knew how young it was. I'm more in tune with the fact that they respectfully calling it assassination.
Right.
Before it was he's a criminal. Everybody criminal. They raided the spot. They went in and executed that man.
Mm-hmm.
So and then to once again get an opportunity to see young leadership. Young leadership.
Kid was 21.
But that really, once again, Martin Luther King was 16 when he got out of high school. Like, it's like there's really no age on this stuff. But once again, we're not exposed to it. We don't get to see it. So to see that gentleman, and even seeing how he balanced, because the story you get from him is he was just a wild, just angry, and I believe it gave some humanity to a sense of his character. And obviously, it's a movie, so there was obviously some things added or taken away. Yet, knowing the story and knowing what he supported, and even how he got, and I'm big on organizing, how he got the community, some of the most thoroughest and infamous energies in that community together to support this initiative.
Right.
It was a powerful. What's about your team?
I would say I think that part of it, the community organizing piece, was very strong, and I'm glad that particular story was told. I had an opportunity to speak with two individuals, really one, and then they had a friend that they called on a three-way and was like, that story. They had watched it, and they talked about how they went back and watched it with the kids. Then went back and more family came over, and they just had to go through it again because many of them had lived through that time. What they were saying to me is that regardless of it being a movie, and you still have some of that dramatics, that this was really the closest depiction of the true story and what really happened that's been told, or at least has this type of mainstream or reach. And so when we talk about the assassination or the murder, we should call it, that's, to me, I think the movie did highlight that and did touch on that. It's not just about clarifying the lie. You don't have to live a lie. You don't have to, that thing of, you don't have to worry about what people say sticks and stone may break your bone. All that is, you don't have to allow someone to just simply lie on you, right? And so the truth, I always believe that the truth outpaces a lie. One way or another. And so this is what that's materializing. Right. In a time coming from when you didn't have social media and text messaging and all of these other things that you can counter sort of these narratives that people can really kill you with. And that happens in grassroots community as well. Right. Where they used to be able to plant seeds about almost anything. I mean, some of the stuff they would say about former Mayor Sharp James and a bunch of others would just be absolutely ridiculous and have nothing to do with politics or real leadership or governance. But they would say it because it creates that swirl that is not killing people that don't look like us. They're trying to ruin you. They're trying to ruin your family. They're trying to stop you from feeding and being able to take care of your kids. But more importantly, they want to destroy your character. Right. And so that's what was happening with him. And his truth is not being told. No, it was because of what I believe Altorice was saying. It's because he was organizing. It's because he was cultivating. And especially in that time, that was totally like, no. And to be not just aggressive, I don't like to say he wasn't passive aggressive, he was aggressive. That's kind of how I was. I am. There is no gray area with me. My tone and my passion is going to be indicative of whatever topic I'm talking about at the time. Right. And so I can imagine living in that time and coming after other greats who have been treated the same way, and to still not be afraid of that. Because I always question that too. Is it why we have so many, I talked about it last week, sit down Negroes? Is it because of that, of seeing something like that happen? Not just the hard work you see the person have to put in, but to see that I'm scared to stand up, to fight, because look what happened too. Bop, 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 and you have so many examples of that. Right. What I admire about the younger generation, even though it may be an instant oatmeal type of thing, instant gratification, we are never scared for the most part. And that might be a qualified term because it's not everybody, but for the most part, that we have to do more with how we treat each other and how we build each other versus tear down each other. But outside of that, we are not tolerating or taking a lot of the nonsense that the older generation once accepted. And I think we have to protect our giants like the gentleman we're discussing, because if we don't, we'll be at the place we're at now where we're looking for the next one who's not afraid. Right. And not that people should have to give their life for fighting for something right, but maybe if people will feel like we wouldn't tolerate it, we wouldn't accept it, we'll fight back, we might shoot back, right? That they would not do what they did to him. They would not do. I mean, Mr. Evers. I mean, we have so many examples of these things where it wasn't the story or the narrative it wasn't about hate, it wasn't about race, it wasn't about crime, but it really was about the work as well. They don't want you doing the work, and they know you're not scared, and this is their way of stopping it. But what did we do about it? Right. It's almost the same thing that we do when we kill ourselves in the community. It's like another day and we just go on. So that's kind of what I took from it. I was just happy to see, it made me Google other things, but I was happy to see some truth being told, and being told by people who respect and honor the stories of people who have sacrificed and given their life without, that wasn't their intent. That just came along with the territory. So.
Right. And for me, I think my immediate reaction, I was upset. You know, I heard the story loosely, but that was more in depth, and we get to see how the FBI took down one of our greats, and not just great because what he was accomplishing as far as coalition building would have been, they wouldn't have been able to touch him. He's getting poor white people, Latinos, black people. He's saying, no, it's not, it's the system itself is failing us. Capitalism is failing us. White supremacy is failing us. That's why they killed him. Because he said, nah, we burning this down together versus apart. And just seeing another black person take him down was really hard to watch. Seeing a black person manipulated, where for me it's like, damn, they was throwing 5 years at you and you got him assassinated. That's hard. That's hard for me to grasp. But it's reality too, because we have those type of people nowadays who will say, you know, for the right dollar, it's whatever. So it wasn't until I heard I can't think of the brother's name. Daniel. I can't think of his last name.
Wayne?
Yeah.
William O'Neill?
No. The actor who played Fred Hampton.
He played Fred Hampton. Daniel.
I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I'm sorry, brother.
Kaluuya.
Yeah, that brother. He put it into perspective. He said, he was basically saying how the other actor played the hardest sacrifice, because in order to show what Fred Hampton was, you had to show what he wasn't. And I think they did that too well, and I think that's what pissed me off. The way they captured William O'Neill, it was like too good, and I was just so angry off of that. And then I realized it was perfect in the sense, because in order for me to see exactly who took him down, that puts more emphasis on exactly who that man was and how impactful he was in his time and period. And the brother was only 21 years old. And I think that is profound too, because they assassinated him with his pregnant wife in the bed.
And people did nothing about it. I mean, I think that's another part of it too. And part of, I think, what was embellished or not told, and I think that was intentionally that we still do that in this country. Men were not the majority of the Black Panthers back in that era. That is a total lie. It was majority females. Probably, some stats would say 60%. It might have been closer to 70. And the masculine aggressiveness of the men that was depicted wasn't like that either. The people who were going hard were the females. And honestly, that's still an issue today. When you hear that we need more men involved, more men in the community, the women are still the backbone. And the only way we could get, not that that's not okay, but the job of the king is to protect the queen. So if we are not in our position or in position to be the protector, this becomes a continuum. On and on and on again. And then there's younger generations of men who don't know what it's like to protect your family, don't know what it's like to meet the female, whether it's your grandmother, mother, aunt, or cousin at the door, and watch them walk to their car, or any of those type of things. They're not learning even from the simplest level how to be a protector, because that's not the role guys are playing in our community. And so that was something of the movie I was just like, instantly stood out to me that no, it wasn't like that. And why do we have to tell it like that? Because the only way we can show that no, it wasn't like that, yes, this is what we need to do, this is wrong, is to be honest just about that depiction. It's no different than Durango when they had them walking around riding horses calling out white people. That wasn't going down like that. You know what I'm saying? So how does that help us in terms of telling of valuing the whole story, not just the characters and their stories that were told.
Right.
And so I say that to say that maybe that was the problem, because where was the 30% of men or the 40% of men that was like, what, you just took out this young black man? Where was that energy at? If it was so aggressive and this hyper masculine energy just going all over the place, where was that hyper energy when what you just described happened to this 21-year-old young man?
Right.
So you gotta remember also during that time, he's coming on the tail end of many assassinations of black leaders already. Like, so by the time they got him, he was the tail end of a lot of other ones that have been wiped out. So when we talk about running out there, to defend, the women or the community, fear is real. Like you said, I heard you say just now, like, they offer him 5 years, but people can't do 5 minutes.
No, I know.
Like, so, like, you don't know, like, he's sitting up in there,
Sweating bullets.
and then the other side of it is also showing, like, yes, he was a rat, yes, he was a snitch, but you also got to play a role. Once he got caught in that vice, the government wasn't letting him breathe.
Right.
Like, even, like, he's like, bro, you locked him up already. Like, you done did the time, I'm done. No. They said, but once again, that's why, I like to just, once again, use example of hope. That's why I went to 2 trials. That's why I didn't cop out. That's why, because I knew, like, bro, like, you forever the victim. You forever,
right.
And I knew that before I seen the movie. So it's like to see that man was going through that in the 70s, and yes, you know people who unfortunately snitched or whatever, and listen, they ain't get snitches. Like, they living and chilling. They ain't nothing happened to them. So I'm more look at the whole story too, and seeing how that Wayne was also put in a vice gripping position too, not to give any leverage away from what he ultimately did and his ultimate actions, but it's just I want to look at the system. Too. How they
manipulated him,
tortured him, because let's talk about the dude that played the white cop.
Yeah.
Like
the FBI
he kind of didn't want it either at first either. And it was like, no, what you doing? And they twisted him too.
Right.
So it's like, no, he made sure.
No, they gotta die.
Like what you talk about? Lock him up. No.
That's because that's not
You're
enough.
getting the message wrong, sir.
Yeah.
It's not what I'm asking for. Because the last time I let something like that happen, this guy went and got a Nobel Peace Prize. Because I'm about to do that again?
No way.
And he's 21?
Yeah, we got to get him out of here.
Last time we let that happen, it was a boycott. Like, we not about, and we talk about the 70s now. He did that in the 50s. So we about to let another one come up?
Yeah.
Oh, nah. And we about to show them we take them out 21 and under too.
And I think that's most interesting, especially when you contextualize history, because he was at the 70s and stuff. They had already seen Malcolm die. They had already seen Martin die, and so many others.
You know Martin Luther King's brother was assassinated too?
And his mother.
Like, dude, like, they didn't just take him. They took his family.
Right.
So this is what these other leaders in their communities are seeing too. Like, man, these people ain't playing. So that is, a fear is real. False evidence appearing real is what we say is happening today. But when you live in that, when they really are hanging you, when they really are putting, like, I talked to my cousin. He was telling me the story of how my family came to North. The migration, but now we didn't migrate for job. Like, my grandfather took the deputy down for touching my great grandmother. So once he took him down, he had to go.
Right.
So my great grandfather went down to Florida, and some of the kids and his oldest son, my grandfather, came up to North. Changed the last name and everything, so they left Georgia. They ain't migrated up there because they wanted to. They migrated because they down there terrorizing people down there. So that's why it's so important, man, that we attempt to get a holistic story about people and just start to really just start bringing this information forward, man.
Right.
Because I'm not saying I'm definitely not promoting I'm a guru and I know everything. I'm just saying I ain't slow.
Yeah.
And I'm learning some things. I'm sure I'm not getting everything off, 100%. But dude, we're not gonna just play in the dark either, though.
Yeah.
Like, we're not gonna act like it's not really happening. It's not a game. It is definitely systematic racism. There is definitely racial equity. There is definitely power. That is real. Now, how we maneuver around these things, to me, is that is the real answer. Because we're not moving. Everybody, when Trump come in, we moving to Canada.
Right.
Somebody leave.
Ain't nobody go nowhere. You right here. I see you.
Complain for 4 years.
And
And
then
now
what?
we waiting for Biden to come, the hope.
The Great White Hope again.
And now we about to see how that rises. Because even if you listen to how they talk about him now, they say the Biden and Harris administration. When had that ever been a play out?
Right.
It wasn't Trump and Pence. It wasn't Obama and Biden. It was Obama. It was Trump. It was Reagan administration. It was Ford administration. It wasn't a combined. So now this year they trying to tag her, make sure she on his back. And it's like, why we gotta do that? Like, we ain't gotta tag on to making sure that we in position.
Right.
Just be in position.
Exactly.
So, that's me.
So
I ain't asking for permission.
Right. And we don't. So I guess thinking about, the movie had me thinking, like, what is, he said, I am a revolutionary. What is that today? How are we embodying that today with, saying and telling people we don't need permission, you don't need permission to live out your dreams, to have economic equity, to do whatever, your will is. So how are we that revolution for people, I guess, in a way, of empowering them through we don't need permission?
I think even before the we don't need permission, that perhaps my approach to leadership and really contributions to not just this community but many communities. And Altorice too, he does community work all up and down the state. It's not just about one community. So what I think about that is a natural fit. I think that's what I was saying in the last week too, to be a part of a movement like this. And I don't see myself as so much of a revolutionary as much as a trailblazer and a visionary. And not everybody is that. And while God doesn't give everybody your vision, not everybody is meant to be in position or is the chosen one to sort of lead a nation or lead a country. You might have the ability to do it. Don't mean you have the drive and the commitment. Don't mean that anointing is necessarily over your life. And so I think that what we do and how we live can be considered revolutionary to people because they are excited to see young black men who range from different generations, who share similar experiences but still have different paths, come together and talk about more than bitches and hoes and hustling,
Right.
and sports and things like that. And still be cool, still have swag, all these things that we think don't go together,
Right.
that do. And so I think that could be empowering or inspiring to someone, and then it's incumbent upon us, not just because it's a part of our purpose, but to show and prove. Like, people are waiting for leadership. They just don't know what camp to go in. And for so long we have been conditioned to be separate and not equal, versus about all the Kwanzaa principles, cooperative economics, Kuji Jagali and all that great stuff that we like to say, but we don't live. So I think the difference is that we live it.
I look at the point of we revolutionary continue to purposely teach, purposely continue to give this information out. Because even this movie right here, one of the things I was looking at, the behind the scenes, who got money, who got paid. Because at the end of the day, they tried to sue for $40-something million and got $1 million. So now who got paid for all this energy? And I see obviously there was definitely brothers behind the movement, but also I see HBO, I see Hulu, I see you, like I see you getting that bread too,
Right.
Because HBO, where you at? Where your stock at? Where you at? Like, you ain't the top of the total pole no more, but you grabbed onto a story that made us come running to you,
Right.
that made us drop $14 for subscription.
Right.
Like, I'm gonna talk that talk too, because like how was the equity in that too, as far as this movie,
Right.
and the people that was playing, and the brother, what's his name, Shaka King, Charles King, those black brothers. Like, I'm hoping, because obviously they do have their own businesses, they all got their own companies. I've seen them, and I look to see, so they definitely didn't come with their tax, with the Social Security number. They came with tax ID numbers.
Right.
You know, but how was the split though?
Uh-huh.
You know, did they go in Master P style, 80-20? You know what I'm saying? Or did they go out there and grab and get whatever they could get? You know, so that's another part of the game we want to also too, because thank you for bringing the story to light. But it was cash being divided behind that story.
Right, at the end of the day. And how is that going back to us, black people, who, you know.
Now we need to follow these gentlemen and see how they continue to move
Right.
and bring it back to the community. And who they do, because I'm not saying they don't. They probably do get back to our community. Who are these people?
Right.
Now we gotta start once, because our own people gotta give back. Listen. That's going. One of these gentlemen was a part of Black Panther. So it's like, it ain't like, so come on, we can't gain black and brown wealth and then, you know, tell on how we giving it back. We definitely gotta listen, baby. Gotta be a philanthropist, you know, because I am. I give back this as much as I'm giving, and I ain't got it.
That's real. That's real. I appreciate you guys so much, man.
I also I did get to listen to some of the soundtrack last night, this morning, and this afternoon.
Another
I
bad.
listened to but it's also really good.
Yeah.
That was another thing, just on a lighter note.
It's so many bad.
Well, it's not
But
even
you're
a lighter.
right. You got to follow the money. You got to follow the money, especially when it's about our pain, our painful stories.
The other thing I was going to say is that, and I made a note of it for myself at the college, I think the movie actually can be utilized as a resource guide to train people who want to be community organizers or who think they're community organizers and think they're community advocates, in terms of what ingredients are necessary to actually provoke change and make happen. And I think this movie is cool enough and relevant enough, and it's not a story that's been told so many times that people will be desensitized to it, that people like, I wrote down T.I. and Killer Mike, for example. And maybe we need to add Meek Mill to that list. People who have the right idea, but not necessarily the right approach. And I'm not saying Killer Mike does it, but his approach wouldn't work for everybody. It's presented as universal, but it's not necessarily.
So I like the way you just said too. It's not gonna work for everybody, because to your point, it's not gonna work for everybody.
Right.
Yet we're open to understanding
The different perspectives.
because you need, and that's why the sauce is so good. Like one thing, even with my energy, I'm not coming one way. I can't. If I'm trying to engage multiple people and I'm saying everybody different, how I'm coming one way?
Exactly.
Like I don't get it. You start off with that's not a possibility, but we still do. We still try to drive down one way of doing it and then cast away the other ones who can't get it. My thing is, let's work together.
Right.
Because my flavor might not be your flavor, but that's why I know you. That's why I know him.
Right.
That's why. So hey,
Because one of these flavors is gonna be your flavor.
listen, man, one of these crayons you're gonna use in this crayon box.
Exactly.
So definitely big, bro.
Yeah, and I think that encapsulates all of us as a group, and why we're coming together. Because again, while we all may align in one area, we're so different. We're four very different individuals with four very different backgrounds, and I think that works for the listener. I think that works for the viewers, and we're going to continue to tell not only our stories but the stories that aren't told, and we're going to tell it and frame it in a way that is saying, we didn't seek permission. History, those powerful black men like Fred Hampton, like Malcolm X, they didn't seek permission, and you as an everyday black person don't need that permission either.
I ain't asked for permission to give out 10,000 book bags. 5,000 coats for the last 2 years. I ain't asked for permission. I made my moves, connected to have to get, and did it. But even if I got it, I still had to give it out. So I had to know the communities.
Right.
Like, you got all the work in the world. If you can't move it, what you say in the record building, you just on the show.
Right. It's not a movement if it's not moving.
Right.
And that's the difference, man. We have to move. And then we like all that diva leadership, man. Everybody ain't, listen, man. Come together. It's a role. Listen, Jordan might have been Jordan, but he was nothing without Horace Grant. So I ain't play them games with Horace.
but he also was a skilled basketball player. Like I said, we got to stop putting people on burgers that belong on fries.
Right.
First of all, Dennis Robinson, I ain't never shoot. I'm good with this rebound. I'm good. but play your position and we gonna win.
Right.
And then
That's
it's
the
the
key.
hit though. But on the same token, when it's time for him to shoot, then it's
Right.
3-pointers back.
Right.
Yeah.
So we all can get in the kitchen, because we all chefs.
Right.
But I like to eat more. I like to cook. I'm just be honest. So man, I know we coming to the end of this show, man.
For sure, man.
Engagement, another energy, man. I'm gonna definitely shout out, Sydney, Oscar. We know you in the energy. You're in the spirit. You're here in the building. We looking for you for next week.
For sure. Again, another week. We don't need permission.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to also getting next week's topic, getting some been great feedback since last week, and more people, even some of the students from the college, Bloomfield, some of the freshman seminar classes, they watched last night's program that we did at the college, and some of them said, well, the sound was this way. So after that, they went looking for more, and they came across the show and sent some feedback about it. One young lady said she was just, I'll share the email with you, or the content of it at least. She was just basically like, she's fired up and ready to go, like in talking about all the different points that we were hitting. So we are definitely knocking on the right, not even knocking on the right door, we're heading down the right path as always.
Right.
And we just have to continue to be relentless in our effort.
And not to impress anybody, to impress upon you, to be honest, we got receipts.
Yeah.
Like Google us. Like we out here really moving now. Once again, I'm not saying we the thing. I'm saying we leaders in our own right. So once again, man, take a look at what we doing. Follow the movement. We don't need permission.
And we're done.
Oh man.
Pardon me. I see him give you the countdown, so I'm gonna put out with the end for you.